Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Jim Ewing with Provision Solutions. We've enjoyed sharing insights, inspiration, and informative updates through our Marketplace Ministries events. Whether in person or virtual, there's been a wealth of great resources provided. Details are provided in the comments below, along with information on staying informed of upcoming events and interacting with others online. We trust you'll enjoy the segment and invite you to be a part of our Marketplace Ministries Network. We'd love to have you as part of our collaborative Christian community. Thanks. And now, here's our presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We are just delighted to have a special guest from the Vancouver Lower Mainland area in British Columbia, Canada, connecting with us here for a conversation about something that I think you're going to enjoy. You're going to find this very, very helpful. I had opportunity to meet with Mike Davies a couple of times in the past, and one of these days, Mike, we're going to meet in person, and I think I at least owe you a coffee, maybe lunch. But we'll get together. You do some terrific work in the Lower Mainland, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about your experiences with our audience today. Can you help us get to know you just a little bit better?
Sure, I can certainly do that. So, you'll probably tell fairly quickly by my accent that I grew up in the UK. I grew up in Wales, actually. And, once I finished schooling, I worked in London for a number of years. Actually worked for the British government under Margaret Thatcher, of all people. That dates me. And after being there for 5 years, I just felt something changed, that I needed to go do something different, at least for a short time. And so I took a sabbatical, fully expecting to come back to London after 6 months, and went off to this organization called Youth with Mission, or YWAM, to do a discipleship training school. So I did that. I did an outreach in Guatemala and ended up staying there for a year in an orphanage, which was probably one of the highlights of my life. Just an amazing time. Then, for some reason, I felt the Lord say, "You're not going back to London. You're going to go back to Canada." So I did. I came back up to Canada. I was living in central BC, just off of Kelowna, and worked in discipleship training schools there for a couple of years, then moved down to Vancouver and have been here ever since. So I've been with Youth for the Mission for 33 years, mostly in the area of discipleship. And the first 20 plus years was discipling young people, hence the name Youth for the Mission. Problem was, every year they got younger and I didn't. So there came a point about 12 years ago where I just sensed the Lord say, it's a time for something different, time to move on. I didn't know what that was. And at that time, I'd been going to a church called Coastal Church in central Vancouver. If any of you know Vancouver, the really tall buildings, the church is right below that, right in the heart of the city. So I've got to know a lot of business people in the years that I've been there. And one of them approached me and said, "Mike, I'm starting a businessman's discipleship program. It's a 2-year program. I'd like you to join." Well, my initial reaction was, no, why would I do that? I'm just coming out of discipleship. But he was persistent, like a lot of entrepreneurs are. And so I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll join that. Could I just do a month and see if it's good and then commit?" He said, "Yeah, that's part of the deal. Is you can come for a few." All 12 of us did commit. We met once a week from 6 in the morning till 8:30. And this went on for 2 years. And it was awesome. It actually blew me away. I was quite surprised at how much life it actually gave me. A couple of good things about this were they were business people here in Vancouver. With YWAM, people come from all over the world to your location, and then they go away again. And you may never see them. Well, these guys, they live here. They're married. They have kids. They have businesses here. So they stayed. So now I have all these relationships with these business people all over the city. So a couple of years into this, I've been seeing some amazing changes happen. Business practices change, marriages saved, just a turnaround in values of some of these business people was extraordinary. They began to ask, how do we give back? What does that look like? We want to do more than, it's great to be part of a church and be on a board and help with fundraising, but there must be more. We want more than that. And I didn't have an answer. I honestly didn't at that point. And it was about the same time a good friend of mine, who I'll actually mention later in a story, Dave Stone, invited me to go to Chiang Mai in Thailand to a business with a mission conference. This was in January. Remember, we live in Canada. Being invited to Thailand in January is not a hard sell. So off I went. Not quite sure what to expect. I had met a number of people in the BAM space before, and often it was, so they could have the ability to work somewhere. They need a visa, so therefore they had a business. So I wondered if it was that. It wasn't. What this was actual real businesses giving people opportunities for dignified employment, raising people out of poverty, helping people not get into human trafficking and that sort of thing. I was like, wow, this is really cool, but I don't quite see how this relates to my guys in Vancouver. The next year, I went down to an event in Seattle, which was quite different. This was all local business people talking about a thing called social impact investing. But more than just that, it was social impact investing with the faith aspect, which, of course, I learned was business as mission. I wasn't particularly, really versed in it at that point. So the next year, I thought, I'm going to take a bunch of my business guys down to this event. This is great. It's local businessmen talking about how they can be involved, either by investing in businesses overseas, by mentoring businesses overseas, or even in their own nation, or even planting their businesses in different countries. So, you know how many came? 0. I was like, okay, that failed. What do we do about this? And I was down there with this wonderful Chinese lady, Annie Lee, and we sat in a cheesecake cafe and said, well, if they're not going to come, I guess we're going to have to take it to Vancouver. And so birthed Business Mission Vancouver in 2018. We had about 50 people the first conference, with about 8 to 10 business people. But we've grown up until this last year. We had about 125 in attendance with about 90 business people. So it's definitely grown over the years. And we've had some incredible speakers in that time just talk about how they've seen God move in and through businesses. So that's a little bit about me. I should mention that I am married, been married for 28 years. I have 3 kids, 25, 23, and 21.
Are they empty nesters now? Are you empty nesters?
Yeah, there's always hope, but no. My youngest has actually left. My son left for about 3 years, actually, to go on a mission trip. Now he's back and he's studying to be a paramedic. And my middle daughter is a professional dancer, just graduated and starting out on her career.
Awesome. Mike, we had talked a little bit about this challenge that a lot of venture creators or entrepreneurs or those with a ministry that they're trying to pursue and get set up and running, or some sort of a special project they feel the Lord has laid on their hearts, that they're often torn between this sense that maybe that aspect isn't what they should do to fulfill their ministry calling. We had talked a little bit about that. Did you want to add just a little perspective on that right now?
So you're talking about, is my work ministry? Okay. Right. Absolutely. I would say, 100% that your business is your ministry. This is something that came up many times in the early years of my men's group of, well, one day when I've got enough money in the bank, when I can take care of my family, I want to get into ministry. And I'd often ask the question, well, what's that mean? Well, I want to stop doing this and I want to go do something for God. So what you're saying to me is what you're doing right now is not for God. Is the usual response I get to that. And then I'll say, well, actually, I think it is. I think you are doing something for God. As over the years, as I've looked at Business Mission and what it does and what it accomplishes, I actually think it can be one of the best forms of mission and of ministry. Why do I say that? I think that business fulfills a number of things biblically that we're commanded to do. First of all, if you look at Genesis 1, the cultural mandate, which is exercise dominion over the earth, subdue it, and develop latent potential, is a way that I thought was actually quite powerful towards business. Yeah, I mean, it talks about subduing the earth and developing its latent potential. What does that better than business? Then you have, the great commandment in Matthew 22, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. I think that can also be accomplished well through business. In fact, sometimes better through business than other avenues. And then, of course, the obvious next one would be the Great Commission, which is go into all the world and disciple the nations. And I think missionaries have done a good job of that, and they will continue to do that. I don't think there's a time coming where we'll say, there is no need for the full time. How do I even say it anymore? Somebody who is maybe not in business, who's full time in missionary work. I don't even know actually how to say it anymore because I believe that's what you're doing as business people. But what I think about business is you're spending most of your life with these people, with this group of people. You're doing life with them. And to me, a lot of discipleship is doing life together. And there's no better place than to do life together than in your 9 to 5 work or whatever your work schedule happens to be. So to answer that question, yes, 100% I believe that your business can be your mission and actually is your mission.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I can just add into this conversation we're having here, Mike, maybe for the person who's kind of at that decision-making point, at that crossroads in their journey, in whatever it is that God has them. Why is it important to have Jesus Christ with us in our ventures? And what might be, say, that tipping point that would bring us to a realization on the importance of that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to go into a little bit of a story here, which I know is a question down the road. But last year we had the privilege of having a guy called Bill Joad come and speak at our conference. Now, Bill is an amazing guy. He started many, many companies, mostly around Shanghai in China over the last 40 years. And he talked a lot about this, about what does it mean to have Jesus walk with you on a daily basis in your business. And he tells this story of how his business almost went under. He needed to get $170,000 by next month, or it was just done. And he went into his prayer closet and he said, "Okay, God, I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to. I think we're done." And God challenged him and said, "Bill, who's the CEO of this business?" "Well, I am." He said, "Well, there's your problem right there. You're the CEO and you're trying to figure it out. What if I was the CEO of your business?" And he kind of took him back a bit, and he's like, "Well, I believe that you're CEO of my life, that you're the head of my life. So why? That makes total sense to me then that you would want to be involved in my business." So at that point in that room, while he was on his knees, he said, "Okay, God, I give you my business. I will follow you. I will ask you on every decision I make business wise. I'm going to now pray about that." So he then, at the end of that meeting, end of that prayer time, he said, "Okay, God, let's start right now. You heard what happened. I need $170,000 by next week. What are you going to do about it?" And he said it was amazing. He said what happened was he came out of that room and he had, that wonderful passage where it talks about, peace that passes understanding. He said, for the first time, I actually really understood what that meant, because I had this incredible peace that it's no longer my problem. If this is God's business, he's going to take care of it. Well, you can probably know what the outcome of that was. It took some time, but by the time the deadline came, that money did come in. But beyond that, a few years previously, they'd actually talked about doing an expansion, which had shelved because of the financial issues. Well, just as that time came up where all the money came in, he'd been praying every day for this. And he said to the Lord, "Okay, God, am I done? Can I stop praying now all the money's coming?" He says, No, we're not done yet." He's like, "But all the money's come in. You remember a few years ago, you wanted to do this expansion. I wanted to keep praying about that." And about a month after this, a lady came and he gave her the tour of of his facility there in Shanghai. And she said, "I want to invest. I'm really thrilled with what you're doing here." And of course, he said, "Well, how much do you want to invest?" "I'd like to invest $2 million, which was exactly the amount they needed to expand." So, to answer your question there about, what does it look like to have Jesus? Should you have Jesus as your partner? I think in that story, you'd say, in a resounding absolutely. If Jesus is CEO of your life, why shouldn't he be CEO of your business as well?
Sounds like that particular situation that turned out to be a win-win, definitely a win-win.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah. So maybe just building on that, if I may, and you've probably talked a little bit about this already, Mike, with respect to prayer in that example of how the prayer of the owner, the lead for the organization, that prayer went up to heaven's gates. The Lord heard it. The Lord responded. So it sounds like prayer is definitely one of those proactive things that an individual could do in order to see the Lord intervene in what we are trying to do and take the lead and show us the direction that would be best for us to move forward. Do you have any other thoughts about how we can activate this?
I think you just said it, prayer. I was just in Seoul, Korea, for the Lausanne Fall Congress about a month and a bit ago, and there was a lot of focus there on business and a lot of focus. Obviously, it's Lausanne Congress, so they talked a lot about the Great Commission. But one thing they just pushed and pushed and pushed, and I think is dead on, is that nothing really ever happens unless it's bathed in prayer. There's never been a revival in history where prayer hasn't preceded it. And I would say it would be the same for a business. That if you're truly wanting to see God move in and through your business, that's going to start with you. If you're the owner, the CEO, that's going to start with you in your prayer closet saying, okay, God, I give you this business. I want to do this business for your glory, whatever that looks like. I give you my title. You can now be the CEO and guide me. And you might be amazed at what you see.
Now, as if there's a team that's involved in this, Mike, is there any further thoughts you might have as to how the team becomes engaged in putting this into action?
Well, that's an interesting question because it really depends on the makeup of your team. Do you have a team that's all believers? Do you have a team that's mixed believers and those that aren't believers? It really depends who you've got as a team. Firstly, I would say it starts with you as the CEO, as the owner, and then it goes from there. If you do have a team, you have other believers, of course, that does make it that much easier. Of businesses I know a number of businesses that are doing some great BAM stuff. Not all their staff are believers. In fact, a lot of them aren't, and that's part of the whole thing of being a BAM business is not just affecting your community and doing stuff outside of the business. It's also what's the word I'm looking for? It's also showing the values of doing kingdom business. It's showing the values of how do I do stuff as a believer, as a Christian, and that will rub off on your other staff. So I would say it's good to find at least one or two others within your business that you can begin to pray with and strategize with. And as time goes on, you might see more and more of your business people go, you know what? I need what you have.
Mike, you've already shared one great story of putting your faith into action in your business, in your organization. Were there a couple of others that you've come across that really resonate with you that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, one, I said earlier that I would mention Dave Stone again. So here he is. So Dave Stone, I met back in the late 90s. He was a business guy out of Arlington, Texas, runs a company called First Rate, and has this wonderful book here called First Rate Living, How to Live in God's Company. And that's a play on words, obviously, as in this is, I want to be in God's company, but this is also God's company. So one of the things he did with his team was every year he went and built a house in Mexico with actually an arm of Youth for the Mission called Homes of Hope. And going back to his teenage years, he always had a vision of going to Afghanistan. He wanted to since he was 18. He's now in his 60s, so it's quite a long time ago. And he left college. He got I think it was an MBA. I could be wrong there, but I think it was his MBA. And he thought, no, I'm now going to go to Bible college. I'm going to go off to Afghanistan. I need to do this mission thing. And he was about to do that. In fact, he said he was in his car driving. And he felt the Lord say very strongly, no, 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 no. I want you to go into business. You've done all this training. You need to go into business. He's like, okay, God, that's not what I was sensing, but I'm going to trust you. So he does banking software. I won't go into all that he does. That doesn't really matter. But he started this business down in Texas, and from day one, they decided they would give away 10% of their revenue towards some sort of mission, not their profit, their revenue, which was a challenge in the early years because he wasn't making a huge amount. Fast forward to about 10 years ago, so the early 2010s, and he's now a successful business person. He's doing very, very well, multi-million-dollar business. And he's also involved with my organization, with YWAM. I got to know him through a program that I was involved in. And he told me, he said, yeah, I was talking to these YWAMers at this YWAM location, and they're taking this team to Afghanistan. So they invited me to go with them. Now, this is 25 years after he first had the vision. So he goes over there, and I think he was in one of the stands next to Afghanistan. They just walked over the border, and he said he just burst into tears that finally he's there. So what does he end up doing in Afghanistan? Well, he did a number of different things, but eventually it settled on the business that he does, which is banking software. So he started a office in Kabul, which is still there. It's made it through some of the ups and downs that Afghanistan has had over the last few years. And he has programmers there in Kabul. And so he did not go as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old missionary, which is nothing wrong with that. He went 30 years later as a successful businessman and started a business right there in Kabul. Now, he didn't stop there. He now has businesses across India, I'm going to try and remember now. He's got them in Chile, in China, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in about a dozen different nations. And that's come through his ability to say yes to God through business. So he is one of my biggest cheerleaders. Actually, he's the reason I do what I do today, because we spent many an hour saying, Mike, you've got a passion for this. You've got a skill for this. I'm right behind you. He's come and spoke a few times. He spoke last year. And to me, he is a great example of one of the ways that you can do business mission, which is plant your business in other nations. And he's done that in spades. He's done that very, very successfully.
Well, that's a great story. I'm just going to ask you, Mike, is there another story you wanted to share with us? Something else that has come up, or have we exhausted the well for the moment?
Oh, no, no. I can give you one more. But it was David Batstone, and I met him about 8, 9 years ago. And he is a serial entrepreneur. He started lots and lots of different businesses around the world. But the one that actually really got me was he was meeting with a Swedish lady in Amsterdam who'd been working with the ladies of the night there for probably about 15 years. And Not for Sale is the company or the organization. And she was frustrated. She said, I talk to these women every night. They know me. They love me. Many of them are coming believers, but there's no off-ramp. There's no way of them getting out of this. There's no other opportunity. So I'm about at the edge of giving up. So he said, well, let's think about this. So over the course of the next few days or weeks, they began to strategize about how could we set up some sort of business that could help with getting these girls off the off-ramp of being in prostitution and actually into an area where, yes, they now follow Jesus, but they can actually now have an income and a job that doesn't require them to sell their bodies. And soup came up. Now, apparently, I didn't know this, that Dutch people love soup. I'm going to be in Holland in a couple of weeks, so I will do my own research and see if that's actually true. It must be because of the story. So they said, okay, we're going to start a soup business. So he said, well, first of all, we've got to get the right chef. So they've been in business for years, so they had the connections. They actually ended up with a Michelin-star chef who helped them get this off the ground. And they started selling soup initially to the girls. And each day it would be a different soup. Well, a couple of weeks in, they were called into the local police department, and they're like, oh no, did we not get the right paperwork for this business. Are we in trouble? They go in and the police say, hey, we've heard about this soup business that you started. Um, can we get involved? And absolutely you can. So now all of a sudden they've got the local constabulary involved in this. It's on an app. Each day they come up with what the soups are and then they can order it. It gets delivered. Well, this eventually gets to City Hall. They join in. So now they've got enough that they actually have to open a actual business on the ground and start employing people. When you know who they employ, they start employing the girls that have become believers and help them get off the street. The city then donated to them a brothel that they'd shut down, which they turned into a restaurant, which has hired more women off the street. And then a few years ago, just pre-COVID, a local supermarket began selling that soup in their stores. So there's just a great story of how, a business has actually accelerated what this amazing Swedish lady had been trying to accomplish for years.
That's an awesome story. And I'm just getting my dad jokes here. From brothel to broth.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. If they need a logo, a little catchphrase.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Um, uh, I'm just wondering, Mike, in your experience, and you've had lots of contact with people who have been in business and done ministry of a wide variety of flavors. I'm just wondering, how are some of these followers of Jesus Christ involved with those that he has them around? What are you seeing? What have you heard?
Yeah, I go back to Bill Job and what he did in his business, in one of his businesses, actually kind of blew me away. He actually hired an evangelist to be on his staff. That I've never heard anything like that before or since. But he actually said, I can't do that as an expat in China. I can't do that, but I can have somebody who's Chinese do that. So he did, and it actually had amazing fruit. Now this guy didn't go around, bashing people over the head each day. He was there really as a kind of like a chaplain, and that's how he helped people in his company. And actually, I would say that is a great resource here in Canada. We have an organization called Better at Chaplains. They used to be called Chaplains Canada. That is one way of really helping in your business. If you want to have some spiritual aspect to it, get in touch with those guys. But what I've seen locally here, is ranges from everything from having a business alpha. I mean, alpha is a great course. It doesn't have to happen in churches. It can happen in your boardroom. It could be a Bible study in your boardroom, or it could be something like, as I aforementioned, Dave Stone, not necessarily as overt as having a Bible study, but why not as a business go build a house for a family that couldn't afford it in Mexico, or whatever country you want to do it in. They're all over the world now. And sometimes those sort of things really jog something in somebody's heart to go, yeah, I want more of this. I want to learn more. Um, Hospitality is a big one. I've seen change in some of the guys I've been working with. Whereas before it would be 9 to 5, you go home, you're done, and you don't think about it until the next day. Well, begin to open up your family and your home, and I've seen that quite a few times, and it's had some very positive results as people see you not just as the boss, but they actually see you as a person and a caring person, a loving person, and how, I mean, if people can see how you interact with your family, that can often be one of the most powerful things to change people's hearts. So yeah, many, many different ways.
Yeah, those are some great examples. And I'm just reminded as you've shared that, Mike, of that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So
Yeah,
by
very much so.
demonstrating the love of Christ through the avenues that are available to us, we can do that. We can build relationship and rapport and share that love of Jesus Christ in our community, within our internal group, our staff, with anyone that would be a stakeholder that we would interact with. So those
Yeah.
are awesome. So I'm going to maybe ask you, Mike, do you have some closing thoughts that you'd like to share for those who are maybe looking at starting out on the path that the Lord would have ahead for them in some sort of venture creation?
Yeah, I would say number one, read. Lots of great books out there. If you want to know what those great books are, I would recommend banglobal.org. They actually just redid their website, and they probably have the best resource library of anywhere I know of all the different books that are available and articles and what have you. Find a local group that is kind of going down this path, whether that be Faith-Driven Entrepreneurs, FH Canada, Praxis. There's all sorts of different groups, even within Canada, that are already looking at these sort of things. Go to an event. Well, here's my plug. You could come to Vancouver. We
Sure.
run business as mission events here. Once a year, we do a conference, and then we do lunches throughout the year. You're not going to come for a lunch from other parts of the nation, but for the conference, you can. And go visit our website, bamvancouver.org, and all the information is there. We already have our speakers for next year, and they're amazing. I think you'll enjoy them. And because we want more people coming from across our nation, this year we're running it right next to the airport at a hotel called the Westin Wall Center on March 7th. So if you have the time and availability, we'd love to host you and see you there. And thank you for this opportunity to share. And God bless you in your business and in your walk with the Lord. And, as they said in a Lausanne Fall Congress, you're the 99%. There's 1% of us that are professional pastors and workers, but you're the 99%. And we really need you guys in the mission field. You are the mission field. So blessings on all that you do.
That message, Mike, has gone out to all of those that would hear this particular message from you today. Thank you for sharing your time, your insights, your experiences. You have a heart and a passion for people to prosper in the place where God has them and to be kingdom builders for Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being with us. We trust you found this to be helpful. And if so, please give us a like, a follow, and a share. The Bible says in Matthew, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." If you're launching or growing a business, a ministry area, or a special project, or if you're involved in helping them as a resource or service provider, we'd love to have you participate with us. Stay informed of upcoming events and items of interest by subscribing to the Marketplace Ministries Update, sent out periodically. May God bless you as you do your best to faithfully represent Jesus Christ in the marketplaces of life.